Desk setup tours are everywhere on YouTube, but not everyone can just go out and buy a completely new desk setup. Sometimes it's best to upgrade piece by piece. Which pieces are worth upgrading first? Well, today I'm going to walk through my own setup to point out which upgrades are worth investing in depending on your specific needs. First and foremost, I use a standing desk, which has been extremely useful for me. It's great to be able to switch between sitting and standing throughout the day, especially since standing can help you passively burn calories. Personally, I think that if you're considering an option like this, it's definitely worth a go. That being said, if you like the desk you currently have, you could pick up a standing desk converter like this one without having to buy a completely new desk. I currently use a standing desk from Uplift, but if you're wanting to get the most bang for your buck, I've had a bit of experience with the Flex-A-Spot standing desk, which I personally believe is the best value standing desk out there. Otherwise, if you're wanting a converter, consider something like the Mop Z, which can raise your laptop to standing height and be taken with you practically anywhere. But of course, anytime people work at their desks, it's usually at their computers. For most people, a new computer may not be the most economical upgrade, but of course people buy computers for all different reasons, so I can't really give a specific recommendation about whether you should or not. If you're satisfied with the computer you have now and you don't have a real specific need or reason for upgrading, then there's nothing wrong sticking with what you have and waiting until an upgrade is a bit more viable. Personally, my daily driver is a base model M1 MacBook Air, and so far it's been perfect for everything I've needed it for. It's surprisingly powerful, and I never find myself thinking about the battery life. Anytime I do use my computer at my desk, I tend to dock it in this 12 South book arc, which effectively just kind of stands the computer on its side. Typically, computer stands come in two different variations. There are docks kind of like this, as well as elevating stands that let you use your computer as a second display. If you don't have one already, you might consider getting even a somewhat inexpensive one, since it can effectively make better use of the space on your desk, whether that's giving you more desk space with a dock, or giving you a better experience using the space your computer already takes up with an elevating stand. Now, even though elevating stands can effectively turn your laptop into a sort of pseudo mini desktop setup, docks usually require you to have some sort of external display since you can't use the computer while it's docked. The one I currently use is the S80A from Samsung, but whichever model you get, I personally found that having a big display like this is extremely helpful for productivity. Sometimes it really helps to just have that extra space so you can move things around or see things a bit more clearly. That being said, if you plan on getting a monitor, consider getting one that's at least 27 inches. If you get one that's any less, you might find yourself wishing you had something just a bit bigger in the future. 27 inches in general seems to be a pretty good sweet spot between cost and size. On top of my monitor, I have a BenQ light bar. This effectively gives me a bit of extra light that fills up my workspace. Something like this is great if you just need a bit of extra focus light, but unless you're trying to save as much space as possible, you could probably just get the job done just as easily with a desktop task light. That being said, I really enjoy how low profile the BenQ option is, and it just creates a really nice fill light which makes it a bit easier to focus. Also, it keeps the desk cleaner, and I can tell you from personal experience that a cluttered desk equals a cluttered head. Of course, anytime you use a monitor, you kinda need to have an external mouse and keyboard. I used to use an MX Keys from Logitech, which is my personal recommendation if you're looking for a keyboard like this, but nowadays I use the K8 Pro, which is a mechanical keyboard from Keychron. Not only is it one of the most solidly built keyboards I've ever used, but the typing experience is absolutely incredible. It sounds amazing, and the keys require so little force to press compared to other keyboards that I've used. Also, the MX Master 3 mouse that I've been using for the past few years is literally the best mouse I've ever used. I know it can sound a little weird to say that about a mouse, but seriously, this is the most well-designed and well-thought-out mouse I've ever used. The scroll wheel effectively works through magnets, so it's super smooth, and it has programmable buttons that are put in really intuitive places. If you sit at a computer all day, you might consider putting keyboards and mice higher up on your list of upgrade priorities. Honestly, switching to a mechanical keyboard like this, I tend to feel much more efficient than I otherwise do with some other keyboards. That being said, mechanical keyboards can be a bit louder than typical keyboards, so just keep that in mind. Also, the Master 3 has pretty much given me no reason to use any other mouse. It really is that good, especially since the 3S replaced the original. Whenever I do use my mouse and keyboard, I tend to use them on a desk mat. The one I use is the Orbit Key Desk Mat, which is effectively a dual layer mat with wool and vegan leather. But honestly, unless your desk has a soft surface or you just tend to be a bit rough on your desk, a desk mat may not really be the most necessary upgrade. If you find yourself in a lot of Zoom calls or Teams meetings, there are usually two things that you need to get the job done: a webcam and a microphone. Since I have an M1 Mac along with an iPhone, I literally just lean my phone up against the monitor and use the continuity camera in macOS, and that tends to work really well for things like FaceTime calls. If I really needed a good angle, I might just use a small tripod like the Manfrotto Pixie. But if you don't have an iPhone or an M1 Mac, you might want to look into getting an external webcam. It's a similar story for the microphone. The iPhone mic is totally usable for FaceTime calls, and if you're in a relatively quiet environment, you might be able to get away with using your webcam's microphone. But in general, having something like a USB mic will typically give you better sound and in some cases, better noise projection. Condensers like the Samsung Meteor will tend to pick up more of your surroundings, but they can usually be placed off camera, while dynamic microphones like the Samsung Q2U need to be placed right in your video feed close to your mouth, but they'll typically do a much better job projecting sound. Now, I'm a big fan of using headphones over speakers, and my personal favorites are the Biodynamic DT770 Pros. They're not wireless, but they're super reliable and they sound amazing. If I needed a wireless option, I just use my AirPod Pros. If you really care about sound quality for things like music or movies, having a good quality set of headphones like these can be really awesome. And what's great is that if you did need an external microphone, you could even buy a headset with a boom mic, which is usually designed for video calls anyway. Unfortunately, those may not sound as good for things like music and such as a dedicated set of headphones would. If you're interested in picking up anything I mentioned today, everything will be linked in the description. In the meantime, check out this playlist to watch reviews of some of the products I mentioned if you'd like to learn more about them. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I'll see you over there. Adios.